So we're out here in Mauritius to test the 2014 F1 range. There's been a huge overhaul in pretty much everything, so it's been a really interesting week for us. We've been blessed with sun, wind, waves, flat water, so it's really delivered. I think probably the main thing that we get out of the meeting is when we talk to the designers, the builders of the kite and the test team, is really how much F1 put into every single one of their products. It's just insane. And without having that direct contact with the people that are doing the job, you really wouldn't understand what goes into it. So that's been really, really interesting. Bandit 7 is here. It's been such a good run of kite. Ever since the Bandit 1, the original one, they've just got better, better and better. And now we're on the 7th edition, which is a really amazing piece of kit. There's been lots of small changes that you won't really be able to see at first glance, but it's behind the scenes and the other things that have gone on that really have moved this kite up to the next level. Probably the biggest change for the 2014 Bandit 7 is the fact that they're now using the Technoforce cloth, which is already in existence with some of the other brands, but F1 have taken a look at the material and its qualities and have used those qualities to really improve the performance of the kite. It's much less stretch than the older cloth that we used to use, which when designed properly and put into a decent shaped kite really enhances its performance. So the first thing that F1 did when they got this new material is actually build an existing Bandit 6 using the new cloth. But because of its qualities, i.e. it doesn't stretch as much, it doesn't move around as much, they found that the Bandit 6 shape had a really, really good high end, but there was no low end, or not as good low end with new material. That fact, coupled with the fact that we've got a new designer, Robert Graham, who was using a different software package before, meant that basically everything from the ground on up had to be completely redone. So there's a new software, there's new material, and a new shape was needed to accommodate this new cloth. So it's a completely reworked kite, which is why it works so well. So some of the features of the Bandit 7, the strut positions are exactly the same as last year, but they've actually reworked the ends of the struts to ensure a smoother airflow over the kite. So the hose connectors for the one pump system have actually been moved so that they don't rest on the canopy. This is really important when it's on the beach and perhaps you've got sand on the kite. Over a course of a season or two, you might get some wear if the clips were on the other side. So it's just a new feature to protect the kite a little bit. So one of the real advantages of having Robert Graham, the kite designer, here with us is he was able to demonstrate some technical features that perhaps we wouldn't have understood if he hadn't been here. One of the questions was why we still use pulleys on the bridle system. And he pointed out that there is a trend in the market these days of getting rid of pulleys for the leading edge bridle. But if you don't have the pulleys, the kite shape's really affected when you're sheeting in and sheeting out. So if he did the experiment where you get rid of that bottom pulley and sort of mimic the sheeting in and sheeting out process, and you can see when you do this, that when you sheet out, you get a slack bottom bridle, which means the kite must flare out to take up that slack. And when you sheet in, the opposite happens, in that this front line will go slack. So with a bridle, that's completely removed. You can do all this and the kite just stays in the same shape the whole time, which means you've got the most efficient shape in the air. So there are some other quite smaller features on these new kites. For example, the force frame, any kind of right angle seam that was there before has now been smoothed out, so you get a much more even spread of load over the frame of the kite. And here on the trailing edge, around the batten pockets, there's a much more curved reinforcement, just to spread the load a bit more. So another feature is that the batten pockets this year are basically one-sided. So you actually have a bit more material on the underside of the kite, which means that the batten pocket on top is completely smooth, and obviously the top part is where the airflow goes, so that's the most important part. All these new features make sense in the classroom, but it's obviously not until you get the kite on the water that you can start to feel the differences that they all add up to make. One really interesting test that we did this year was actually take a Bandit 6 9-metre and a Bandit 7 9-metre and go out in pairs on the water with the same board and really test them back to back. So we'd spend 20 minutes on the 6, switch over, spend another 20 minutes on the 7. And it's really then that you start to understand the differences between the two kites. So the Bandit 6 was a lovely kite, really, really great performing kite. But because of the material perhaps and the way that it was made, it just felt a bit more springy perhaps. Whereas this one in the gusts, when you're moving it around in the air, there's so much less flutter and it's a much more direct feeling. So another performance enhancement with the Bandit 7 is there's actually much less lateral or sideways pull in the Kite. It has many different sort of benefits, but your jumps are much more up and down rather than along. But the less sideways pull means that there's less pressure on your legs, less pressure through your harness, which means you can kind of really concentrate on the water in front of you and forget about what the Kite's doing. It's much, much smoother. So that's pretty much it for the Bandit 7, other than it comes in a really nice new bag and some amazing new colours with some really cool graphics as well. We'll talk a bit more about the surfboards and the twin tip range in the next couple of videos.